Hi, everyone, and happy Mother's Day. Ah, the sacred bond of women, life givers, and the child they have so brutally destroyed their body, mind, identity, and soul for. The peaceful image of a newborn and mother, skin to skin in a loving embrace. But what if your infant wasn't so tender and mild? What if they developed into a murderous bastard? Perhaps the only thing that doesn't die so easily is a mother's love, which has never been more abundantly apparent than in It's Alive that came out in 1974, with Bong Joon-ho's mother that came out in 2009. So when It's Alive, when Frank and Lenore find out they're going to have another child, man, they are over the moon. They are just like, oh, another little bundle of joy to add to our happy marriage and a sibling for our loving son. Nothing could be more perfect. Well, it is a later in life pregnancy for the 1970s, so things are already a little bit dicey whether or not, this kid's gonna be as healthy as a child developed with a more virile seed. And I do feel like on today of all days, we can denigrate the dads a bit. And you know what, dads, I don't want to hear it because I am, conductor of the dad train, all right? I am the steadfast dad soldier, okay? I am on the front lines every Father's Day in the comments section, like, hey, mom's still in the picture, or the marriage a happy one, or what's the old status of Mr. Cargo Shorts there. um I hate to admit this, but if you're a man my age, you got your dad in your dating profile, I'm indeed dating you for your dad. Yeah, harsh truth there, but hey, man, that's how I roll. Know what I like? And if you're a hot dad watching this with your cargo shorts, hit me up, man. But today we will denigrate your decaying and decrepit sperms. And we are going to leave the mom's perfect and divine womb out of it. I think you can take a little ribbing on today, and tomorrow expect your steadfast soldier, reporting for duty. So you know what? This baby is a demonic 12 pounds, who knows how many ounces. Just Lenore, just, you know what? She delivers a mutated, vicious, murderous bundle of death. And one of the coolest scenes in cinematic history, okay? It's like Frank like runs into the operating room and she's like bleeding out, shackled to the hospital bed for some reason, screaming at the top of her lungs, and then like all nurses, doctors, bystanders just like dead on scene. And eventually the Vulturous press gets a hold of this story, and whatever the fuck this thing is, it's going on a killer rampage across the greater Los Angeles area. The score, top notch, evokes this real melodious dread. We got a Rick Baker design demon infant. Look, I'm gonna call it. It's my favorite Larry Cohen, which is a difficult thing to say because you know what, the guy's a legend, man, as a screenwriter, as a director, in this case, both. And you know what? If you've watched the channel before, you are aware of my undying love for Abel Ferrara. And Larry was one of the writers who worked on his very underrated Invasion of the Body Snatchers that came out in '93. Stuart Gordon as well, for all interested parties, which I know is everyone. I know is all of you. So check it out if you know it's good for you. Even if you don't, check it out anyway. Um, but the thing about this baby, though, is even though it's frightful, it is frightfully cute too, okay? And it only kills because it's scared. And I'm actually like 100,000% with Lenore for hiding him in her basement. It's like, you know what? While Frank's love might be conditional, a mother's unconditional. And you know what? Gotta be real honest. I'd love to see this thing get thrown a birthday party, Maybe not a surprise one. And, the filling may not exactly be raspberry jam, but you know what? I can't help but be really endeared by the whole thing. And I have to say, when the first time I saw this, it radically shifted my stance on motherhood. And I realized I was like, you know what? I only want to be a mother if it's a fanged clawed monster. And in a way, I did fulfill this dream. Of course, you watched the channel before. You know, I am a mother to this type of creature, referring to Bugley, of course. So I did kind of fulfill life's dream in that area, I suppose. But back to the baby. It's not the baby's fault. And it's like it's the offspring of just like this unwitting experimental birth control, and it's like forged in the frustration of a woman's eggs that can't fulfill their duty. And I don't know about any other aging women. Um but you know what? I get this very furious rage from my eggs every month, when they haven't fulfilled their duty. And it's like they take on a life of their own, and they want to do as much damage and anguish to a body they feel like has forsaken them, and they just exit in like the most agonizing tantrum ever, right? And it's just like, God, the baby really does a great job of personifying the death rattle of life giving powers. And I just gotta say, every time I turn this on, I'm like, you know what? Yep, that is exactly what my period feels like. Thank you, Larry Kahn. You know a woman's body better than she knows herself. Gotta give it to you. But you know what? Of course, it also represents like unethical experiments, procedures, and inappropriately tested medications that women have a history of receiving from the medical field and industry. Um, yeah, medicine and not our greatest ally. Dr. Quinn, our medicine woman, excluded, of course. But you know what? I do have to say, I am a part of the problem because if I was promised a monster, okay, if someone came to me, promised me a monster, do it in a heartbeat. It's like, hey, there's this experimental procedure that we're going to do. Very highly likely, almost 100%, you'll give birth to a demon, just monstrosity, a real abomination. I'd be like, son, yeah. In fact, my greatest fear would be that the experiment would work and I would come out with like a healthy bouncing baby. Because in that case, get it away from me, straight off to an orphanage, straight off to a home, throw away the key. I don't. I only want it if it's a monster. um, so, yeah. I guess, you know what? I guess you're welcome, world at large, that I never became a mother. I have not ever, I will not ever become a mother, except to Pugs and Bugley, which I guess is the closest to an uncouth little devil as one could get. So, you know what? We're all more enriched and better off for it. And of course, like Frank does eventually show compassion when he realizes the thing is scared. And he does try to protect it, but by then it's too late, Frank. Okay, and it's shot dead with the battle cry of a de facto pharmaceutical rep and the godless police. And it does set up a sequel. It does set up a sequel at the end, which I haven't seen. And it's actually a trilogy. And the last one is called Island of the Alive. It's alive, Island of the Alive. And boy, was I hot when I found that out. I was like, you know what? What the fuck am I doing? Like, I'm sitting here and watching movies all the time, every day. You're telling me you never got to It's Alive, Island of the Alive? What the fuck are you doing, Katie? I feel like timeout. God, I just deserve a cinematic timeout. And, it's just shit, man. The shame. But I will get to it um, and report back on my letterbox. So at least there we go. A little bit of salvation, a little bit of redemption, maybe for me. Consider that on my very pathetic soul. So then we got Bong Joon Ho's Mother, which is a pitch black betrayal of how far a mother is willing to go to protect her child. And it's one of Bong's darkest films to me. And it follows this single mother and her mentally disabled son. But now he's like this young adult and he's quite functional, if not like a little too easily influenced and pretty exceptionally naive. Um, but the truth of the matter is the relationship is super codependent. It's like, does his mother need to watch his dick while he pisses? Like, I don't know a disability that would ever warrant that. It's like, does his mom need to pull the chicken off the bone, like in this weird, disgusting makeshift baby formula, filleted meat? Like, no, lady. you know? I think honestly, like this son would do well with having a job and socializing with like-minded friends, or at least having like something to occupy himself, besides hanging around in degeneracy. And he's got like this really deviant friend who's like obviously an extraordinary bad influence, and he uses him as like a scapegoat for vandalism and misdemeanors, and it's like he's known around the police station, and but where things really go awry is when this poor boy starts getting horny. He starts peeping, he becomes fixated on young women, without really knowing the slightest thing about them or really anything sexual in nature, really. But when this dead girl shows up in the town square, it's like, oh, it just so happens he did have contact with her, followed her into the night, in fact, and it's not looking great. But from there, because he is so easily influenced, like the police take advantage of this and then like coerce him into a confession. And so predictably, like the mom loses her mind and then she's like, I gotta play detective, I gotta clear my son's name. And of course, like there's more to the case than the police, ever bothered to investigate. Which, by the way, I encourage like everyone to learn more about our law enforcement, judicial, and correctional systems because a detective's job is not to pull together evidence and find a perpetrator, but rather find the most obvious person to have likely committed the crime based on precedents and then build evidence around them. For instance, like a woman's murdered. It's statistically highly likely it's her current or former partner. But a detective taking this case, like he would collect evidence around that assumption, which is why like so much evidence can be recovered with re-examination because like so much of it can get tossed aside or not considered relevant due to frankly circumstantial assumptions. So even though this is a Korean system, it operates in much the same way. So she ends up finding out a lot about the dead girl's past, medical history, but things don't go as she was so certain that they would. The more she tracks down, the more evidence becomes unfavorable. um, and the film ends where the film begins, with this upsetting dance of like avoidant insanity. Because it's like, what does she do with the information she's found? Are there karmic repercussions or reparations? Like, how far should a mother be expected to go? Especially because we get this really unhinged scene earlier in the film where we get to witness the grief and misery of the dead girl's family. Bong doesn't shy away from excruciatingly showcasing the victim's side. So we're kind of left considering like, is this act of preservation indeed an action of love? And look, motherhood is a complicated mess. It unfortunately takes some women until after the fact to realize maybe they should never had kids. um, Someone nothing more, but it never comes to fruition. I mean, some are changed really profoundly by this experience. And not just hormonally, not just physically, because obviously the act of having a biological child changes your body functioning for the rest of your life. But, like, regardless of the biological nature, it shapes you mentally and sometimes not always in the best way. And it also, like, a mother's love wades into very murky waters. It's like if your child was a murderer, an active shooter, a violent offender without remorse, like your love for them doesn't cease. But is defending and covering up their vicious behaviors an act of love or self preservation? And I think a lot of women can agree that There's whole generations of mothers who have enabled their terrible sons by frankly refusing to accept and ignoring their child's externalization in adulthood from the lack of parenting in their upbringing. Is it easier to colloquialize the differences between genders with, like, boys will be boys, lest we forget this is a direct result of socialization? But in this vein, it's like how we raise our children isn't entirely in our control either. Like, for we're a product of our environment too. But once confronted with the reality, would you face and accept your child's actions, even though it might break your heart? Or egocentrically bury your child's homicidal misdeeds? Consider it this Mother's Day as you sit around at brunch, opening your various gift bags of candles or Bath and Body Works gift sets, and look each of your children straight in the face, deep in their eyes, down to their very soul, and ask, what is true devotion? How would I love my evil, sanguinary children? Happy Mother's Day. Have a great time checking these two out. Have a wonderful day. And I'll see you in the next one. And to all the dads, see you on Father's Day.